Leviticus chapter 4 from verse 1. The Lord said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, when anyone sins unintentionally and does what is forbidden in any of the Lord's commands, if the anointed priest sins, bringing guilt on the people, he must bring to the Lord a young bull without defect as a sin offering for the sin he's committed. He is to present the bull at the entrance to the tent of meeting before the Lord. He is to lay his hand on its head and slaughter it there before the Lord. Then the anointed priest shall take some of the bull's blood and carry it into the tent of meeting. He is to dip his finger into the blood and sprinkle some of it 7 times before the Lord, in front of the curtain of the sanctuary. The priest shall then put some of the blood on the horns of the altar of the fragrant incense that is before the Lord in the tent of meeting. The rest of the bull's blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering at the entrance to the tent of meeting. He shall remove all the fat from the bull of the sin offering, all the fat that is connected to the internal organs, both kidneys with the fat on them near the loins, and the long lobe of the liver, which he will remove with the kidneys. Just as the fat is removed from the ox sacrificed as a fellowship offering, then the priest shall burn them on the altar of burnt offering. But the hide of the bull and all its flesh, as well as the head and the legs, the internal organs and the intestines, that is, all the rest of the bull, he must take outside the camp to a place ceremonially clean, where the ashes are thrown, and burn it there in a wood fire on the ash heap. This is the word of the Lord." Leviticus, we come face to face with a holy God who is willing to be in relationship with the Israelites even though they are not by nature holy. And we've seen a number of different offerings they can bring. We've seen the burnt offering, the grain offering, the fellowship offering. And over the next couple of days, we're going to be looking at what is called the sin offering. And the sin offering is a very significant part of the offerings that God's people would bring him. Because if you want to be in a relationship with a holy God, sin is a huge problem. And as Colin Buchanan puts it, there's a nasty sickness going round. It is in the country and the town. The little baby's got it. The oldies got it too. The baddest sickness in the world is sin. Every single heart has got it in. Sin is very much like a sickness, isn't it? Everyone gets it. Everyone catches it. It's like the cold. We can't avoid catching it. But sin is a terrible thing in the eyes of a holy God. And particularly when we come to the sin offering, in chapter 4, verse 1 and 2, we see God says to the Israelites, when anyone sins unintentionally and does what is forbidden in any of the Lord's commands. So this offering is an offering for unintentional sin. Unintentional sins are things like manslaughter. A manslaughter is accidentally killing someone else. You genuinely had no intention of doing it, but killing someone else is still a sin, whether or not you meant to do it. Another modern example for us would be driving 80 in a 60 zone, thinking that it's actually an 80 zone. I've done that before. I didn't know, but I was still sinning. It's still wrong, even if you don't know. And later on in Leviticus, we're going to see other issues addressed of where there is knowledge of sin. Now, what happens in this chapter is it basically talks about the idea that when there is someone in the community who is sinning, it impacts the whole community. And there's a New Testament parallel to that. In 1 Corinthians chapter 5, it talks about a little bit of leavening the whole batch of dough. A little bit of sin in the church will impact every member of the church. For Israel, a little bit of sin in the community, a little bit of unintentional sin will impact the whole community. And what we see in this chapter 4 and half of chapter 5, we get a list of different people. We start with the priest, because if the priest, who is the one who mediates between God and his people, if he is corrupted by sin, wow, Israel's really in trouble. So it starts with him. And then if the whole community sins, that's the next worst thing. Then if a leader sins, that's the next worst thing. And then finally, if a individual member of the community sins. An individual member will affect the whole community, but a leader, that's worse. The whole community, that's worse again, and the priest is worst of all. So we're going to start looking at the priest today. And actually, as we look at the offering the priest brings for an unintentional sin, in some ways the offering is very similar to what we've seen in the burnt offering, the grain offering, and the fellowship offering. For example, the proper gift is very similar. He has to bring a young bull without defect as a sin offering for the sin he's committed. Now, the priest has to bring a more valuable offering than another member of Israel would for the sin offering. For example, another Israelite might be able to bring a goat or even a couple of birds, but the priest must bring the very best pure bull. It's got to be the proper gift. And once again, the blood is involved. And the priest, in verse 5, we read, the priest has to take some of the bull's blood and carry it into the tent of meeting. He dips his finger into the blood and sprinkles it 7 times before the Lord. So in some ways, the proper gift, there's a similar pattern here as there are earlier. And also the proper presentation. Once of all, if you were to read verses halfway through verse 7 to the end of verse 10, you'd see there's very careful preparation. All the fat, the internal organs are removed. They're a burnt offering to the Lord. Proper presentation, similar. But while the proper place is still really important, there's a couple of key differences we need to notice in Leviticus chapter 4 and 5, and particularly here. When it comes to the proper place, we actually realise that in this sacrifice, and this is the only sacrifice we've seen this with so far, that it has not happened with the burnt offering, the grain offering, and the fellowship offering, and it will not happen with the sin offerings for the whole community, the leader, or an individual. It only happens for the sin offering of a priest. When a priest makes a sin offering for himself, he must go inside the tabernacle. And he doesn't go into the most holy place where the Ark of the Covenant is. He doesn't go inside, but he stands outside the most holy place and sprinkles the blood across the entrance. And that is what's going on. He's getting as close as possible to the holiness of God without going in, and sprinkles the blood. That underlines how serious it is if a priest is corrupted. And there's another difference as well. And this is something that hasn't happened yet, but verse 11, the hide of the bull, all its flesh, as well as the head and the legs, the internal organs and the intestines, that is all the rest of the bull, he must take outside the camp to a place ceremonially clean, where the ashes are thrown, and burn it there in a wood fire on the ash heap. Now that's new. Like the burnt offering is completely burnt up before the Lord. The grain offering and the fellowship offering, some of it is given to the Lord and some of it is eaten by the priests and the people. In this case, like the burnt offering, the entire bull is burnt up. But some of it is burnt up as an offering to the Lord, and some of it is taken outside the camp and completely consumed by fire. It's a symbol of, the priest has laid his head on the bull. It's a symbol of the sin being taken out of the presence of God and consumed and completely dealt with. Sin needs to be dealt with. Pretty interesting, I think, but I want to raise 2 ways that this is really significant for us in light of Jesus, in light of the blessed assurance we have in Jesus. So, first of all, let me ask you this. If the sin offering needed to be taken outside of the camp and burnt up, how amazing is Hebrews chapter 13, verse 11 to 13? The high priest carries the blood of animals into the most holy place as a sin offering, but the bodies are burned outside the camp. And so Jesus also suffered outside the city gate to make the people holy through his own blood. How amazing is it that Jesus is the ultimate sacrifice that purifies us completely from sin? So we don't need to worry about our mediator being purified all over and over again. Jesus is the perfect sacrifice and the perfect priest rolled into one. And hear these words about him being perfect priest. Hebrews 7 verse 26 says this: Such a high priest truly meets our need. One who is holy, blameless, pure, set apart from sinners, exalted above the heavens. Unlike the other high priests, he does not need to offer sacrifices day after day, first for his own sins and then for the sins of the people. Jesus sacrificed for their sins once for all when he offered himself. For the law appoints as high priests men in all their weakness, but the oath, which came after the law, appointed the Son, who has been made perfect forever. And so Colin Buchanan can sing in his songs about a sickness in the world. He can sing, we've got to come to Jesus. He's the only one who heals us. We need the great physician. Jesus is the perfect high priest and the perfect sacrifice who takes away our sins. And as another hymn writer has written, blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine. Thank God for Jesus, the ultimate sin offering and the ultimate priest. We'll see you tomorrow.